So there is a presence in the room tonight of someone who is not there, Leopoldo Lopez, who has been imprisoned for a year now in Venezuela and still awaiting possibly a trial to legalize his status at the moment, and we will hear more about it in just a few moments from our two speakers. Now, as you probably know, Venezuela has known a period of greater and greater instability over the last decade or so, with an increased turn to the unjustified use of force by both state and non-state actors, paramilitary groups, leading to imprisonment of many people and mistreatment, sometimes going as far as acts of torture at the hands of prison officials. This has been accompanied by, I think, what could be fairly described as the gutting of the Venezuelan judiciary for the last decade, a sort of political takeover of the court and the replacement of independent judges by judges without tenure and who can be removed at the will of the executive. And indeed, judges have been imprisoned for issuing decisions that displeased the executive in Venezuela. This has been combined with repression of freedom of the press, of the media, with new laws being adopted to permit the revocation of the licenses of various media outlets in the country, which were indeed revoked, leading to a silencing of any opposition voices in the country. And finally, this has led to the persecution of people working in human rights NGOs and in civil society, as well as human rights defenders and anyone linked to the opposition in Venezuela. The treatment of Leopoldo Lopez in particular has been characterized as a violation of fundamental human rights by the UN Working Group on Enforced and Involuntary Disappearances, as well as by the Inter-American Commission and Court of Human Rights. And a year and a half ago, Venezuela went ahead and formally denounced the American Convention on Human Rights, becoming only the second state ever to turn its back on the inter-American human rights system in the Americas. And this connects these events to this place here because of the very significant potential for regional destabilization flowing from the events in Venezuela when he announced the country's decision to withdraw from the inter-American system. Hugo Chavez, who was then in charge, invited other leaders in the Americas to do the same and to withdraw from the inter-American human rights system because he said it was sort of a puppet regime at the hands of the American government, which is obviously a ludicrous assertion. So we shouldn't underestimate the reverberations that can flow all the way up here in Canada from the events in Venezuela. And it does point to the need for Canada to actually stand up and do something, perhaps starting with the ratification of the American Convention on Human Rights to give the country some credibility when we criticize events such as those in Venezuela, because as it stands now, the answer inevitably is that we haven't even ratified the convention, so how can we criticize others for not fully abiding by it? So there is time for Canadian leadership, an example in this area, and hopefully the session tonight will give us some more reasons why it is urgent to move in that direction. So we will have two speakers intervening in turn. Carlos Vecchio, who is a lawyer trained in the law in Venezuela, and then at Georgetown and LLM, I think, and then further studies, I think, an MPA at Harvard. He was the co-founder of Voluntad Popular, the movement and political party started by Leopoldo López, and I think is the de facto leader now of Voluntad Popular. He will be followed by Diana Lopez, who is an artist, who is the director of an NGO called Acción por la Libertad. I think the name speaks for itself, and who also happens to be Leopoldo López's sister. We will, I think, be joined by Erwin Kotler, who probably doesn't need much of an introduction, who is a professor here, emeritus in the Faculty of Law, former Minister of Justice of Canada, and long-time international human rights advocate. So, Carlos, do you want to take the floor?